We got a couple of new defensive options in V Premium, as well as the new weapons from set 4 for Bavsargra, but surprisingly enough, we also see a brand new Trickstar unit. Or should I say, a new trick unit.
Stand up! Vanguard!
Hey Cardfighters, welcome back to another Cardfight update, and today it's Tuesday, so we're gonna cover once again the weekly new livestream reveals, but on top of that we also are gonna cover the card reveal that happened yesterday at the end of the anime episode, which is of course referring to the new Trickstar-like unit. But before we dive into that, let's first take a look at the new shop promos that are going to enter the Japanese format, which likely will come over to the English side in about 2 to 3 months. So first off, we've got a new V Premium Spike Brothers promo, which is this great to cheer girl Fiona, and her effect is quite interesting and quite unique because this is effectively a effect failure in Vanguard, because her effect is auto when this unit is placed on the rearguard circle or put on the guardian circle, which means you can also intercept with her. Cost Soul Blast 1, choose one of any player's other rear guards and it gets power plus 10k until the end of turn, and cannot pay the cost of any of its auto abilities. Now you might think to yourself, what does this actually do? Because you buff a unit but also negate the auto abilities, is some kind of restriction to compensate for the power gain? Not necessarily. Yes, you can give one of your units plus 10k power, and if they don't have any auto abilities, you don't really matter for this restriction and you give it 10k power. But that's not really the use case of this card. What this card allows you to do is basically negate one of your opponent's offensive plays, because you can guard with this, use her skill, and give the 10k power to one of your opponent's units. And you might think to yourself, that's not a good thing because you give them more power than actually shield that you're generating, but by shutting off some of their key important auto abilities, you can save yourself a lot of trouble or a lot of cards in hand. A good example is if you're up against Angel Feathers and they have Hamiel, you can basically negate the entire Hamiel guard restrict as well as the extra power before the Hamiel even attacks. So this could be a great way to give Spike Brothers extra offensive options, and it seems that the Spike Brothers, especially in Premium, have a lot of tutor abilities and allow them to fetch cards whenever they want. This is a great card they can just slot in as a 1 over 2 of, as they can easily just search out for it in the right circumstances when you're gonna need it the most. Now, moving on to the second V Premium promo, we got a brand new Gear Chronicle Grade 1, which interestingly enough is a brand new hate round, which might or might not see actual play, because we got this Grade 1 Steam Performer Markham, and its abilities are act on rearguard circle once a turn, cost Soul Blast 1, and discard a card from your hand. And this unit cannot be chosen by your opponent's card effects until the end of your opponent's next turn. So instead of having resist, you need to pay a pretty hefty cost to give this card resist. Soul is pretty important for Gear Chronicle, and a discard can hurt you to some extent, but it depends on which deck you actually are playing. But the main reason why you want to do this is because of its second effect, which is auto rearguard circle. At the start of your opponent's battle phase, cost Counter Blast 2 and bind this unit. Choose one of your opponent's rear guards and put it on the bottom of their deck. If you put, your opponent looks at the top card of the deck and calls it to the rearguard circle. This is basically hate around, but instead of doing it during the guard step, you're doing it before the battle phase happens. So if your opponent setups during their main phase, they're ready to attack, you can immediately disrupt their combo before it can happen. In certain instances, this is actually better than hate around because you stop them before they can even do things, but in other instances, that's not really all too important, and because of the hefty cost that's attached to this card, it's arguably a much worse card than hate around. And also on top of that, it's a main deck card, so you need to draw into it or have some way to get it onto the board in time, unlike a G-Guardian where once you have a heal trigger in your hand, you will always have access to it whenever you need. Now there are definitely some arguments for this card. In Premium, I would say not so much, because the 2 Counter Blast cost and the potential Soul Blast to give it resist is way too much value they're going to waste on the card like this. Unless a very specific instance is going to be very important. But right now, I think for Premium, hit round is probably the way to go. You want to fill your deck with actual good cards. That said, V Premium is a different story, because in V Premium, we don't have hit around, so we don't have those defensive options. And in V Premium, Not every deck has spot removal access to them, so you might not even need to pay the resist cost to keep this card on the board long enough. And also the 2 counterblast cost might not hinder you all too much, because depending on which deck you're playing, you're not really using a lot of counterblast. Like the Chronojet build, the main counterblast consumer is Chronotooth Tigar. Besides that, the only cards that use counterblast are certain combo pieces and deck choices, but depending on how you're gonna build your deck, you're not really using that all too much, so you could make room for a card like this, especially if it allows you to save your ass a certain turn and allowing you to get into a next turn where you can win the game. So I can see some potential in V premium for this card, but that's about it for it. Now moving on to the third promo, we've got a brand new Dark Stage promo for, of course, Overdress, and it's this grade 2, which is Steam Knight Amar Sin, and its effect is continues a regular circle. If you have 5 or more cards in your soul, this unit gets power plus 5k, active on opponent's turn 2. It's an 8k base, so it basically becomes the 13k attacker that stays on the board on that power level. Nothing really special, probably will never actually see play, because there are definitely a lot better grid 2s to play with, so we can move on from this one. Now, that said, we're now gonna actually talk about the new cards revealed for set 4, and these are of course the new support card for Bavsargra. We've got 2 new weapons, the weapons that have been teased all along, the new spear and the crossbow or gun, whatever you want to call it, and of course the new Trickstar unit. So first off, let's take a look at actually this new Trickstar unit, because here we have a brand new grade 0 unit for Dragon Empire, which is Trick Moon. And Trick Moon has 2 effects, one of it being auto. When this unit is placed on your back row center rearguard circle from drop, counter charge 1. This is a countercharger on demand. Now in Bavsargra, you might think to yourself, how does this really work? Because she doesn't really have good ways to get a deck onto the field. Well, we do have the whole Maiden archetype, the Blaze Maiden archetype, which works with grid 0s, and I believe there's a grade 2 that allows you to resurrect one for, I believe, a counterblast. So this allows you to get this thing on the board every single turn if it gets removed for no cost, as you immediately refund the counter charge. Now in Nirvana's case, you can basically run 1 copy of this card, maybe 2, as a counter charge engine, which you will have access to every single turn, because Nirvana can just resurrect a grade 0. It's not restricted to Trickstar, so you can run this as a counter charge engine in Nirvana, which is pretty interesting. But Trick Moon's main value lies in its secondary effect, which is of course support for Bavsargra herself, and that's Dress Boost, a new keyword. Auto rearguard circle. When this unit boosts, the boosted unit gets power plus 10k until the end of the battle for each armed card to your Sealed Blaze Maiden Bavsargra. So this can potentially be a 25k booster. That's not too shabby. That's actually a lot of power for free. Yes, it's kind of restricted, but interesting enough, this boost application isn't restricted to the center back row rearguard circle. So you could have an entire back row filled with Trick Moons and empower all your columns, which is actually pretty damn decent with the power gain it gains. And you might think to yourself, it does gain 10k power if you have 1 weapon, and only if you have 2 weapons you gain 20k power, which is a bit slow because that's turn 4. That might not necessarily be the case anymore with the new weapon support, because this is somewhat already addressed. So let's take a look at this weapon that I'm referring to, which makes Trick Moon even better. That weapon being the right deity arms weapon, Sealed Blaze Spear Adhitya. And this weapon is of course a right deity arm, so it's placed on the left on your field because the image is reversed. It's a bit confusing, but that's how it works. And it reads, place this with cost counterblast 1, so the cost to play this weapon is 1 counterblast, and then its actual skills are auto and Vanguard circle. When this card is armed, draw a card, and you may play 1 additional arms card this turn. This is pretty huge, because not only allows you to cycle through your deck, so you need to pay a counterblast to play the arms in the first place, but luckily we do draw a card, so the counterblast, you get at least some value out of it. But on top of that, it allows you to immediately play another arms right out the gate, which means you can have a fully armed Bavsargra right on your very first grade 3 turn, which makes the deck also a lot faster, and it makes your Trick Moon also a lot more potent. And if we combine this with the shield, that means once we hit grade 3, we immediately have a 10k shield every turn, and we have the spear as a weapon, because this weapon also has another effect, which is continuous Vanguard circle. During your turn, The unit armed with this card gets power plus 10k. So you have 10k power extra on your Vanguard, and you have 10k extra shield every single turn, right at the gate for 1 counterblast, and of course the cost of the shield, which is actually really good, and together with Trick Moon, can be very aggressive. So that's actually a really good card. I think this is much better than the sword from the trial deck, because yes, the sword also I believe gives you 10k power, but it costs 2 counterblasts and losing to deal damage. Whereas I feel like immediately equipping another weapon in the same turn is probably a lot better. Maybe you can go next turn into the sword, placing on top of this to deal damage next turn, go and then call something else the following turn. That might be a play. But on the very first grade free turn, I think this is probably the better go-to weapon in that instance. Of course, if you have another weapon that's on the left side or the right side to make the complete package actually matter. If that's not the case, it's of course a different story. But that said, moving on to the other weapon, we've got this grade free weapon, which is Sealed Blaze Gun Chandra. And this is of course a left deity arm, so it's placed on the right side of the field. And its play cost is 1 soul. So that's also not too shabby. But then its unique effect is cost Counterblast 2. And the unit armed with this card gets drive plus 1 until the end of that battle. At the end of the battle, put this card into your drop. So for 1 soul and 2 counterblast and effectively a discard, you give your Vanguard 1 extra drive check. Is that really worth it? I want to say no. I don't really think this is actually a really good weapon. I much rather prefer the shield because that is consistent value. Maybe if you go for a push turn, you can go into this. You just give an extra drive check. If this is your first grade free turn and immediately go into this, this feels kind of bad. Maybe if you want to go crazy, you can combine this with the sword and then have attack, have triple drive, potentially hit some crits. Your opponent is almost dead and then use the sword to deal an extra damage to be very aggressive. That could be a play, but I'm not so sure if that's actually really good. So yeah, this is an option, but I much rather prefer the combination of the spear with the shield, as it just gives you more consistent value over turn, and you have the sword and potentially this gun to get immediately raw value. So depending on your playstyle, how you want to go, you can go for either option. And those were all the cards that we got today, but that doesn't mean this is all the news that we got, because we also saw a glimpse into the new Lyrical Monastery set, because they already revealed the generic set information for set 2 Lyrical Monastery, as you can see right here, because the next set for Lyrical Monastery will contain 80 cards, from which 11 are triple Rs, 15 are double Rs, 19 are rares, and 35 commons. But on top of that, it also houses 92 special parallels, from which 6 are lyrical secret rares or special rares, which I assume were either the new boss units of the new right lines or a combination of the new boss units as well as certain support cards for the already existing right lines. I don't know which direction I want to take, but we know there are going to be new right lines in this set. Or other speculation, it's only one new right line, and just like the Kyrie right line of the starter deck or the trial deck, it will have the entire package being an entire portrait as a parallel. That could also be a thing. And on top of that, it also houses 35 speeds and 51 hollows. So that's all the information that we got so far. And of course, the release date being February the 25th, but I don't know if you already knew this, or at the very least, now this once again being confirmed here. And that is everything that we've got so far for this week. Now, next week, we already know what we're going to get. We're going to get Flagberg support cards. So I assume the card art that was already revealed, we're going to know what that does, as well as a couple of other cards to complete the entire package for Flagberg. But on top of that, we are going to get even more set 2 Lyrical Monastery information besides the screenshot that I already showed today. So maybe we're going to get card units, or at least artwork of new units, or maybe we'll get a glimpse of a mechanic or something that gives us at least a bit more information on what we can expect from the second set of the Lyrical Monastery set wave or nation sets or whatever you want to call it. But with that said, that's everything I want to cover today. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys think of the new weapons for Bavsargra, as well as what you guys think of Trick Moon. Now, as a side note, there's been a lot of memes and things going on with Trick Moon, as we already got Trickstar, and now we have Trick Moon, so a lot of people have been speculating, so when are we gonna get Trick Sun? But spoiler alert, I don't know if most people know this, but the sun is a star. So I think Trickstar is basically a different wording of just sun, because Trick Moon doesn't necessarily have to be around the moon of the Earth, because the moon of the Earth is also just a generic moon in general. We just called it the same thing as what it is. That's like calling the sun just star. It's a star, whereas our moon is a moon, so it's a moon. It's same as calling the Earth planet, so it's a planet. It's a bit confusing, but I don't believe there's gonna be a third trick unit. I think Trickstar is the sun and Trick Moon is the moon, which makes a lot of sense. But who knows, I might be wrong, they might give us a Trick Sun, but for some people, Trickstar is already our sun. But that whole thing aside, let me know all your thoughts in the comment section down below, and also, what are you expecting or what do you hope to see next week for Flagberg support? As always, this video has been brought to you by our lovely patrons over patreon.com/insider. You guys are amazing. If you want to support the channel or everything that's happening on the channel, you can simply go to patreon.com/insider and become a patron today. But with that said, I've been Mr. Time Leap, and I see you guys in the next one!